Welcome to Malpractice Podcast.
Hello, are you ready to get started?
The hello kind of scared me. I was like, ah.
It kind of scared me too. Maybe we should start over.
No, I like it.
Okay.
It's spooky time.
Perfect. Oh, it is almost a spooky season.
I think so.
I'm Sydney.
And I'm Jess.
And this is Malpractice Podcast.
And welcome.
We welcome the spooky season.
Spooky time. Yeah.
I'm ready for it. We're going to have a Halloween party. Do you want to come?
Okay. Oh, wait, I can't. I'm going to my grand little's wedding. It's the weekend of Halloween.
Ew, who would do that? Sorry.
It's so cute. It's her birthday.
Oh, ew.
She loves Halloween. Like, people are going to dress up.
Yeah, but then what if you get a divorce?
So?
Then you got married on Halloween and on your birthday weekend. It's like 2 holidays are ruined for you.
Or you could just, murder someone. I don't think they're going to get divorced. They're really, really cute.
Well, that's the dream. But also, I just love Halloween. I want Halloween weekend to be really designated.
They do too.
For its
They
time.
love Halloween.
Also, the thing that you have to know about having weddings around a holiday is that people will participate in a theme.
Yeah.
Without your knowledge.
I thought you were going to say people will try and shame you for it. Like, my dad was like, I think I'm going to have to cancel my St. Patrick's Day party to go to Sydney's wedding. And I was like, you have to go.
I don't know what to tell you. This is the weekend.
I'm sorry, 17 people won't have a good time on St. Patrick's Day.
Like, all of my aunts wore green thingies in their hair, which that's fine with me. But one of my aunts got married on what do they call it? April Fool's Day. And the ushers, they passed out those like Groucho Marx glasses with the fake nose. And so the bride and groom turned around and everybody put them on.
I would have been mad.
Just tell me, just tell me. Just like clue me in.
I would have been mad.
I don't like a surprise like that.
If I was clued in, I would have said no.
Right, correct. And then if they did it anyway, I would have shut the wedding down.
Yeah.
All of you leave. Dinner is canceled.
No.
Good day. My wedding was on St. Patrick's Day for anyone who doesn't know, and I did have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think people had a good time. They did get, I think, extra turnt.
It was a great fucking wedding. Are you joking? There are so many photos.
People had a really good
where
time.
I am in sunglasses inside.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that aesthetic.
I love it,
on
honestly.
the regular. We were having a blast.
If anyone is getting married in the near future, we passed out as our wedding favors a pair of sunglasses, and I will say the pictures turned out really cute.
It was really cute.
Because everybody put their little sunglasses on. It was precious.
No, they were so cute. No.
I thought that was fun.
Okay, we need to update everyone. Everyone, listen up.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
This is some official podcast business.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're here, you're family. But don't get too crazy because we talk shit to our family. So
that's true. Family can catch these hands too.
And I'll never say anything different. That's exactly how I feel.
Correct.
So we recently received an email from the daughter of Marilyn Bixler, who was one of the murder victims of Billy Kamirmir. And we got an email from Cheryl Pangburn. I don't want to say her name wrong because I'm obsessed with her. So yeah. I believe that's right.
Cheryl Pangburn, I think, is correct.
Yeah. She sent us an email about her mom, essentially, and about that there's even more to the story and kind of just shedding more light. So we wanted to mention that and say, Cheryl, I know that we fangirled responding to you because we're obsessed with everyone who has like family in that situation who have taken that and, made really big changes. So thank you, Cheryl.
We absolutely love getting feedback from our listeners. We absolutely love interacting with you guys. But I have to be honest, this is one of, I think, the best things to come.
Oh, yeah.
Out of podcast episodes so far. I was so touched by her. Number one, let me just say, when you get an email from the daughter of a murder victim that you talked about on your podcast, there's always like a 1 second flinch where you're like, what if she hates us?
Yeah.
Like, what if we didn't do her story justice?
Yeah.
We just want to handle topics with compassion, and we want to give these stories the respect that they deserve. Simultaneously, we like to joke around with each other and we have a good time together. So we never want it to seem like we're being disrespectful. And Cheryl was so complimentary and so sweet with how she reached out to us. And for reference, her mom, Marilyn, is just this beautiful.
Oh my God. She's the cutest lady. I'm obsessed with her.
If you saw her at a party, I would immediately go talk to her. She's
Correct.
so precious. She looks like she was absolutely the life of the party. And she was murdered, and she was obviously taken away from her family too soon. Even in her 90s, she was taken too soon because she was still vibrant and beautiful and such a special soul. And so her mother, Marilyn, is the one that Maryland's Law
is named after,
which was changed in Texas by people, including Cheryl and the people that support her in that community. They changed that law. So that's absolutely amazing. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah. I didn't know I could hate Billy Kamiermeier more, but I do fucking hate that guy. Like, I fucking hate that guy.
Yeah.
You know, Cheryl, I hated him before. It's just, he is so disgusting. And the more that we learn about the families who are left to kind of pick up the pieces, the more I hate him. He's disgusting. He
just
is like
a fucking monster.
He is a monster. It just, if you haven't listened to that episode, it is wild what he got away with. It is wild how these families struggled to put the pieces back together. And he is currently, you know, in the jail. So we'd love to see that.
For life. Personally, I'm kind of glad that he's going to be there for life and probably, hopefully, fingers crossed, have to think about the fucked up things that he did.
Yeah.
And all the people that he affected. Marilyn, you know, we can't stress this enough. When we learn about the victims, it's so touching. Cheryl, thank you for your email. Thank you for not hating us, too.
And thank you for sharing a bit about your mom with us. Like, that was really cool. We talked about her for like a whole day.
The picture that
she's super cute.
Can I talk about the picture that she sent us of her mom, Marilyn?
I think so. Okay. It's really cute.
She sent us this beautiful picture of Marilyn on her 90th birthday in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, with a big drink in her hand.
Turn up,
very
Marilyn. Clearly
having a blast. You know, all of us can only hope and pray to be that vibrant and vital when we're 90.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was honestly the most touching thing that I've probably ever read. I started crying as soon as I read it.
We're both just sobbing.
Correct. The other thing we wanted to shout out is Tom Cuthbertson. I hope I'm saying his last name right. He reached out to us on Twitter, who is an archaeologist and seems like someone, I'm just going to say it, he would be very fun to have a beer with.
I hate beer,
seems like.
But I will have something.
A mixed drink, perhaps.
Yeah.
Coffee. So he listened to our Body Farms episode, which I think we published last week, right?
Yeah. That was a cool
In
one.
y'all's universe, it was last week. Yeah.
Yeah.
He tagged us, and this is what he said. Quote, listening to the Body Farms episode, embalming became common during the Civil War to help with getting bodies home. Pink muscle in Civil War era burials is fairly common because of arsenic embalming. Blah, blah, blah. He had to write basically a protocol around it a few years ago because as an archaeologist, this is something that you come into contact with, I guess. So during our Body Farms episode, we talked about the fact that a Civil War era body was unearthed and it still had like pink tissue.
So they thought it was a fake.
And Tom is saying that basically that is common because of apparently arsenic embalming, which is amazing.
Tom, do you want to be on our podcast?
Yeah, do you want to be our friend? Thank you.
That was really cool. That's why I think like that stuff was so...
It was so cool.
That episode was so cool to research because I'm like, this is really interesting.
And I just want to say, I absolutely love that our listeners have these...
They're smart.
They're just incredible, like, badass professionals with amazing jobs.
Yeah.
They're, like, smart people. So thank you, Tom. If you ever want to come talk to us about archaeology, this is, like, an open invitation. We would absolutely love it.
I don't know shit about it. I'm into it. I barely know shit about anything I talk about here.
I mean...
Lots of research.
Archaeology, I just think of, you know, like little paintbrushes and like dinosaurs. That's archaeology, right? Paleontology. Shit. I think that's paleontology.
Oh, damn. You're so right.
Come tell us about the difference, Tom. We don't know.
Tom's probably like, please stop talking to me.
Yeah, stop saying my name so much.
Sorry, Tom. Okay.
Anyway, thank you. We love listener feedback. These were two examples of like, they happened right on top of each other, and we were
Yeah.
just like, we got to talk about this because it's
Yeah.
the best.
And I want to shout out Sydney
Oh.
because she hosted our interviewee. She interviewed Dr. Jonathan Baktari. He has been in the medical space in clinical, administrative, and entrepreneurial. I hate that word. I never say it right. For like 20 years. He is a triple board certified physician with specialties in internal medicine, pulmonary, and critical care medicine. He has in the past been medical director of the Valley Health Systems, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, Culinary Health Fund, and currently is the CEO of two healthcare companies, E7 Health and US Drug Test Centers. So I don't really know. Maybe you got into this, like what he does in his spare time, but I doubt he has any.
I don't think he has any.
Yeah.
He seems pretty busy.
He has also served as clinical faculty for several medical schools, including the University of Nevada and Toro. So shout out to Sydney for hosting it solo. And yeah, welcome to the podcast, Dr. Baktari.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jonathan Baktari. I'm the CEO of the E7 Health and US Drug Test Centers. I'm also a physician, obviously, and I practice clinical medicine, been medical directors, professor in medical schools, and now, mainly the CEO of those two healthcare companies, as well as, try to be a thought leader in the medical and healthcare world.
So, what made you choose medicine?
Yeah, I think, I was pretty much a straight arrow. I got straight out of college, straight into med school, wanting to, like most people go into medical school, want to help people and have an impact on people's lives. And so that was really the main focus originally. And then, as I got further along and, became board certified in internal medicine, pulmonary critical care, practiced all those things and became a senior partner, then kind of gradually evolved into other things like administrative stuff. And that sort of took a life of its own.
Okay, that's so interesting. And it's also interesting that you are triple board certified with three different specialties. So they're internal medicine, pulmonary medicine, and critical care medicine. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was. I didn't renew them, but yes, I was board certified in all three and practiced. I get internal medicine, but then the focus of it was also later on in my clinical group, pulmonary and critical care, especially ICU medicine, intensive care medicine. So we ran ICUs and took care of people in the intensive care unit, sort of on life support, end of life kind of potential stuff, and critical illness was the big focus of my clinical career.
Okay. And what, if you don't mind me asking, what made you choose that medical path during your career as a clinician?
That's a great question because I think I was very naive when I went to the medicine. I said, "Well, doctors save lives,
Hmm.
right? That's the goal. So you're not just supposed to get rid of a rash or a sore throat. That's not really saving a life."
Yeah.
So my pure sense of what doctors should do said, well, what specialty did they actually go home and say, I saved a life today? Not like in theory, like I started treating someone's asthma. I wanted that more immediate gratification of saying, yeah, today, I got somebody off life support or off a ventilator, or
Yeah.
I think that was more the pure play on saving lives for me as a person. And but then when you get into it, it's a very fascinating specialty because it's very data oriented. You get a lot of data when people are on life support and there's machines and data coming at you. And I think that satisfied my more scientific side of me, because medicine is an art as well as a science. And when you're doing outpatient medicine,
Hmm.
the art component is much bigger. But as you approach critical care, it's still an art. It really is. But some of that art goes away because you also have so much data and science
Mhm.
coming back at you that it's more science than in a primary care setting where, somebody may come to you for migraines, but really what's going on potentially sometimes is they're struggling with stress or some other thing that you're supposed to figure out. They come in with one complaint, but really, you have to kind of scratch that and figure out what's the three things behind that.
Right.
There's less of that in critical care, to give you a long-winded answer, where it's just, yeah, that's the problem, we got to address it. And so that appealed to me on some level, but I still got to do outpatient medicine where you still had that sort of art and science. So I thought it was a good blend, a great blend.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And so, from being a clinician, now you're the CEO of two healthcare companies. That's a pretty impressive resume, number one, but could you tell us a little bit about those two companies?
Yeah, so E7 Health actually started out as, we were called it the Vaccine Center. We were, until 2017, we were a adult vaccine company.
Mhm.
As pure as you can imagine, it was a COVID company before COVID hit.
Right.
I mean, we focus on vaccinating adults. And part of that is, the statistic that you can see on the CDC. There's about, give or take, 50,000 vaccine preventable deaths in the United States annually. It's like the same number of people that died in the Vietnam War, and that's annually.
Yeah.
So there's a problem, with preventative health and adult vaccine medicine that I thought we could make an impact, and nobody was doing it. And primary care doctors were doing less and less of it and giving it more away to Walgreens and CVS, who, that wasn't their main focus either, because Walgreens is trying to sell you chewing gum and they're trying to sell you,
Right.
potato chips. And this is not like their calling in life to give you these adult vaccines.
Exactly.
So we just thought, boy, is there an opportunity to impact the healthcare world? And we came up with this unique model. We've created our own space where we got into every book of business that adult vaccines were involved. And then we provided all the other services around the adult vaccines, like physicals and titers and, vision testing, hearing, depending what the company or the school or the client or the person off the street needed, we provided all of the service around the vaccine.
That's a great idea. So, sort of a one stop shop.
Yeah, literally, funny thing, a lot of our corporate clients, when they sign up with us, they fire the 4 or 5 companies they were using to use us. They fire their flu shot company and their drug testing company and the company they were getting their employment physicals, and they were the company they were getting the vaccines. And so, yes, it is, the one-stop shop is really where we think we've created our own space. Once our clients find us, I like to think they would never leave because we provide such great service, and we do. But truthfully, they don't, much of them don't have a choice because there's nowhere to go.
Right.
But luckily, we've built so much technology and client services around there that, with 10,000 positive reviews on our website and 4.9 Google rating, the customer experience is still great, so they don't want to leave. But on some level, a lot of them can't leave because where would they go when you've created the space? So we don't take advantage of that. We actually build on that.
It's a really interesting avenue for innovation. And I think that you kind of touched on digital health. And I want to talk about digital health and how you guys have been incorporating that and some of, I guess, where you think digital health is headed in the future, because I feel personally like it's been really underutilized in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
and I do feel like it's probably the future of healthcare, so I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I struggle to answer that question because I think there's competing forces. There's a reason why, going to the doctor's office is not the same as ordering something on Amazon or Uber Eats and, getting something. There's a reason for that, and the reason is not pleasant. The reason is mainly because there's a third party tied to that transaction, which is insurance companies. And lastly, government. While government is amazing in the sense that allows the healthcare delivery to people who wouldn't be able to afford the healthcare, certainly with Medicaid and Medicare, which is amazing.
Mhm.
The downside of that is that interference becomes a distraction for technology to proceed because it's not as simple as just market forces. We still have to make Medicare happy. We have to make Medicaid happy. We have to comply with this. We have to comply with that. We have to maximize reimbursements. So all the technology gets sidetracked. When you're developing a technology for
Yeah.
a business, you're like, hey, I just have a couple of things I need to focus on. What do I have to do to reduce friction between my customer and me? And what do I have to do to reduce friction between me and the customer? And what do I have to do to maximize their user experience? And so they buy as many things from me as possible, and I give them this great product and service in return. So if technology was being applied to healthcare with those being the only variables, it would be easy.
Mhm.
I mean, believe me, the healthcare industry is per capita bigger than any other industry practically. So you would think we would be leading every other industry in technology, but still, there's a 50% chance if you go see your doctor tomorrow, you're going to walk in, someone's going to hand you a clipboard,
Yeah.
like a clipboard. Like, what is that?
Right.
That's like, why don't you roll out the dinosaurs? Give me a clipboard. But that's still happening. But why is that happening? And I think I can talk to that more, but that's there lies the problem. It's not as simple as digital technology is the way to go. Let's do it.
Mhm.
I think the reason people struggle with it is they have these barriers.
Yeah. On your YouTube channel, you had, I think it was episode 32, you were telling your followers about how to get the most out of a doctor's appointment,
Uh-huh.
like how to communicate with your physician to make it really a productive appointment. And I think that's such valuable information for everyone to know because I think for me, even as a what I consider a pretty educated healthcare consumer, it can still be really easy to walk into the office and leave and go, okay, wait, what just happened? I didn't get any information out of that.
Right.
So I was wondering if you could kind of condense some of that information for our listeners and tell people what are your like top tips for how to communicate with your physician, how to get the most out of an appointment.
Got it. Got it. Just to be clear, you don't want me to talk about how to pick a primary care doctor. You want to say once you're in there, how to navigate
Do
that.
both. I would love to hear
Because
both.
I did an episode on that too, on how to pick a primary care doctor.
Start with how to pick them and then maybe how to talk to them.
Right. Well, I came up with this topic on how to pick a primary care doctor. If you don't mind me saying, I was trolling other people's podcasts and YouTube site on that topic. And I'm like, let me go and see the number one, two, three on YouTube on how to pick a primary care doctor, right? Because I found one 5 million views. I'm like, oh, this should be like gems in there. 5 million people. How to pick the
Yeah.
and so this guy comes on, and I won't say his name, you can figure it out. He goes, the way to pick a primary care doctor is find someone who cares, find someone who listens. No, you're kidding me. All this time I've been looking for doctors who don't care and don't listen. Of course,
Yeah.
that's not it. That's not actionable advice,
Right.
right? You can't go in there. So before we go any further, doctor, do you care?
Mhm.
Are you going to listen?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's who's gone out there looking for doctors who don't care and who looking for so what you really need is practical advice.
Yes.
Like what can I really do?
Mhm.
Right? Not in a it's sort of like marry someone who's going to love you back. No. The way that the way to make sure you don't have a divorce is marry someone who's going to love you. Of course, no one ever stood at the marriage altar
Mhm.
or whatever and said, I'm marrying this person even though they don't love me back. So you got to get the obvious out of the way and talk about really what can you really do?
Yeah.
The number one thing, absolute number one thing is call their office before you're a patient. And I promise you, if you get this press 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, and then then you press 3 and then you get press 1, 2, 3, and then you press 2 and you get press 1, 2, and then you get a message, okay, fine, leave a message, we'll call you back in 24 hours. Look, they don't want your business.
You're going to have a bad time. Yeah.
Clearly they don't want your business, right? But let me ask you a question. if you called your favorite restaurant and they put you through that every time you called,
Yeah.
what's that restaurant telling you?
They're too busy for you.
And like from the top of a mountain. I mean, why don't they just say, listen, we don't really need your business. Your HMO locked you into us.
Yeah.
So you're lucky we're even here. Leave a message and make sure when we call back, you're not on the other line because otherwise you're going to have to go through this all over again.
Yeah.
I'm exaggerating, obviously, but clearly, those kind of stuff should hit you over the head.
If it feels like they're kind of herding sheep
Right.
from the very beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, which is more has to do with medical groups that have been bought out by other groups, is the interchangeability of the doctor. Remember, in the old days, and I have a podcast on this too, 25% of doctors work for other people. Now 75% of doctors are working for a corporation. So it's become the consolidation of healthcare. There used to be 10, 12 cellular phone companies. Now there's 3. There used to be 12, 15 airlines. There's 3 now, or 4. What's happened to airline service when it went from 12 to 3? What's happened to the cellular phone service, when it went from 12 to 3? What do you think is going to happen to healthcare when 75% of doctors are now working for someone else,
Mhm.
and a few major corporations in every city control the majority of doctors? So that already should be a sign. You got to really understand, am I catching the 25% that are on their own, or am I catching the 75% that are working
Right.
for a company, which necessarily is not bad, but they come with their pros and cons, because you're really signing up with the company, not that doctor. And that doctor may have a 1-year contract that may or may not be renewed. Within that system, there's an agreement that,
Yeah.
9 out of 10 times you won't actually even see the doctor. You'll see a PA, nurse practitioner. You need to navigate the rules of the road before. So I think, when you watch these podcasts on how to pick a doctor, now you see what I'm talking about. Oh, make sure you find one. There's bigger issues than that. Find one that cares. I mean, who does?
Yeah.
Like, that's not actionable. These are things that are much more actionable. Hey, are you in private practice? Are you your own boss? Do you work for a major healthcare system? What's the turnover there? What's the likelihood that I will see you again versus another provider? And do you guys rotate clinics? Are you always in this clinic?
Right.
I've seen doctors who are like, I'm in Santa Monica this week, and I'm in Westwood next week, and I'm in Brentwood the fall. Like, well, that's going to be a different experience.
Yeah. So I feel like this is so interesting because a lot of these points that you're making are things that you can basically establish before you ever come into the office.
Yes.
Versus something like, do they care? Is like you have to go through a bad appointment before you realize that they don't care.
Right. So the whole point in watching a video on how to pick a primary care doctor is literally how to pick them, not how to go through the bad experience and figure out that you're not in the right situation.
Exactly. No one wants to do like trial and error with their health care.
Right. That's why you're watching the video.
Right. So once you've picked a doctor and you feel like you have a good connection, you're getting the communication that you need from them, how would you say
Right.
what is the best way as a consumer, as a patient to sort of maximize your experience?
Look, there's so many key tips, but the number one tip I'm going to give you, well, before I tell you the tip, there's a tendency. You finally got an appointment. You're finally in there. You finally made it through dialing multiple things, and they got back to you, and you finally got in. You waited 6 weeks,
Mhm.
and you want to unload. You were there for one problem, but as long as I'm here, you're going to the grocery store to pick up, orange juice, but you're like, hey, as long as I'm here, let me get the cream cheese and the yogurt and
Yeah.
whatever. And so I think there is this sense that I finally have an audience with the whatever. And so I need to unload every possible issue that's been running through my head.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, yeah, I know I'm here for the migraine, but I also want to lose a little weight, and also, I have this issue with my lower back, and by the way, my friend told me about this new vitamin. What's your opinion on it? So I would say the number one thing is pick one, maybe two
Mhm.
issues to address with them. Because I can tell you on the receiving side of that, I may have a lot more to say about your one main issue, but you're coming at me with four. So I'm going to give you an abbreviated because you're cutting me off and giving me more. And where I may have had more to say on that one issue,
Yeah.
besides getting you started on this ulcer medicine, let's talk about your ulcer diet in detail. 'Cause I want you to really stay away from chocolates, tomatoes, acid-based products. And then you're like, well, what about the, yeah, that one too, and this and that. And just remember, don't eat 3, 4 hours before you go to sleep. And, you're giving so all of this, ulcer reflex kind of advice. Now that can be done in 2 minutes or it can be done in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The question is, do you want the 15, 20 minute version or do you want the 2 minute version? Because you are now asking them about weight loss or
Yeah.
your lower back pain. So lesson number one, only focus on that.
Yeah. Don't walk into your doctor's office and go, "Fix me."
Yeah, right, right. But here's what I would say though. A lot of people think that they literally are allowed a certain number of appointments. You can literally leave as you're walking out of that office, say, I like to make another appointment.
Yeah.
Use that strategy. As you're walking out, say, yeah, that was a great appointment, but you know what? I need another appointment. I didn't want to bother him, but there is some other issue. Can I? And this way you don't have to go through the whole, hitting 1, 2, and 3 and, that whole thing again.
Yeah.
So book another appointment. Say, I have a separate topic. Insurance will cover it too if it's a separate issue. But by the way, the other thing that they don't understand is doctors necessarily don't get reimbursed if they solve 5 problems in one visit.
Yeah.
They roughly get the same payment.
Right.
Yes, they can upcode it a little bit, but often it gets denied. I mean, think about it. It's if the grocery store would charge you one price, whether you bought the yogurt and the cream cheese and the bananas, as if you just bought one,
Yeah.
they're not going to be so thrilled with you getting everything for that same price. I don't think doctors and providers think like that, but on some subconscious level, I'm getting, $80 for this visit, and I'm supposed to give a 45-minute talk on, the perfect diet for weight loss
Yeah.
but you can have a whole meeting about weight loss with your doctor. If you add it in, he's going to say, well, okay, let's refer you to a nutritionist. But if you really want their input, make that the sole purpose
Yeah.
of the visit. Say, "Hey, doc, you know what? I know this is crazy, but I'm struggling with weight. And from what you've said, just even in passing, sounds like you could really walk me through this diet thing. Can you help me out here? And can we have a whole thing on it?"
It's definitely one of those things where I feel like most people do exactly what you were saying, which is they want to go once a year and they want to handle a full list of issues while they're there.
Right. But I think you're probably not going to get everything especially if that one issue is a big issue for you.
Right. And then that's your biggest tip. Do you have other tips in that same area?
I do. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that, and I don't mind giving you more. The other things that I'll just give you some bonus stuff. If you were seen in an urgent care, bring that record with you.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, a patient would come to me and I say, well, I sent you to the cardiologist. So what did the cardiologist say? Because, I haven't gotten the records and they didn't bring them with. And if there's any providers, PAs, doctors listening to this, if you had a nickel for every time someone said this, you could retire tomorrow.
Yeah.
Patients turn to me, he goes, you know what? He didn't say anything. I'm like, what? What do you mean? No, I went to see him. He examined me and he didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, he didn't say anything? No,
Yeah. You're like, that doesn't sound right.
he said something. And so that's not necessarily true. And so they probably just didn't absorb it. So, getting those records with you.
Mhm.
So if you went to see the cardiologist, say, hey, cardiologist, I'm going to be seeing my other doctor. Could I have, my medical records emailed to me so I can give it to him or could you send it to him? But I think, that's because a lot of times the visit is almost wasted
Yeah.
because I'm waiting for this other input
Mhm.
that is going to be part of our decision tree of which way to go.
Right.
And they're there and they're saying the guy didn't say anything.
Yeah.
So I would say, get the medical records, find out what they say, or if you had laboratories or a CAT scan or anywhere else, bring those in.
Yeah.
Doctors we process data as well as examine you, whatever, and we're trying to do a risk assessment
Hmm.
of what's going on. And more data, the better our assessment will be.
Yeah.
And so if there's any data that's out there that we just don't have access to, it pains me to make a decision without it.
Right.
Now, if the data doesn't exist, then you have to, move forward. But if there's something sitting out somewhere in the universe,
Hmm.
which actually gets back, you circle back to what you were saying about what we're doing at E7 Health with digital healthcare. That's one of the problems we think we're addressing.
What I'm really hearing is that as a patient, it is essentially your job at the end of the day to be kind of the communication coordinator. If you have multiple doctors that you're seeing, if you have, multiple tests that are being run, it's your job to consolidate that information and communicate it concisely.
Yeah, you have to provide the data as reasonably well as you would think it would be relevant, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
If you're seeing your dermatologist, he's really not going to care what your cardiologist says. So yeah, keep that when it's relevant.
Yeah. No, 100%. So you brought up E7 Health. E7 Health specializes in vaccinations, viruses. I heard someone describe it as you were an expert in COVID before the world knew about COVID.
Right, right.
What are some of the things that you feel like, maybe as a company, as a society, as a physician, what are things that you feel like we learned from the COVID pandemic?
For us selfishly, I got to tell you, nobody really took adult vaccination seriously as much as we would like, as they probably do now. People would come to us even for travel medicine, say, well, I'm, traveling to Kenya on a safari. And we say, well, based on CDC guidelines,
Hmm.
you're going to need this and this vaccine, or I'm going to South America. And you say, well, you need the yellow fever vaccine. And they're like, yeah, yellow fever vaccine? I've never heard of that. And I had a friend of mine go and he didn't get it, so I'm not sure I even need that.
Yeah, you're going to want it.
We would tell people pre-COVID about these vaccines, these travel medicine vaccines, and they would kind of look at us like, I didn't see yellow fever vaccine, next to the flu shot sign at Walgreens. So I'm not even sure this is a real thing, but I think we're getting less and less of that. People now see the value of adult vaccinations in ways that they may not have fully appreciated before. Not only vaccinations, but in our clinics we give counseling on how to avoid
Yeah.
certain diseases like yellow fever, and for example, mosquito related diseases like malaria and yellow fever or Japanese encephalitis. Or we tell them how to wear long pants and wear long shirts. And
Hmm.
we have all these strategies that, along with the vaccine, people hopefully will digest that kind of information in ways that they may not have before.
I really hope that one of the things that people took from COVID was the seriousness of vaccinations. I always have to talk even my family members into getting, every 10 years you need to get a tetanus shot, because there are so many preventable deaths
Right.
from, like, it's a simple shot. It's not going to cause any side effects. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, tetanus, pneumonia, shingles, the list goes on and on for adults. And so, yeah, I think there's really an opportunity there.
Yeah. I think another opportunity, and you talked about this in an opinion piece that you did for The Hill about misinformation spreading during the pandemic. I think as a scientist myself, number one, it was an excellent read. I think it was really good. We'll link that in our show notes because it was an excellent read. But also, it resonated with me because of my profession.
Mhm.
And we, as scientists, as clinicians, we should be making information more accessible to the public. But how can we help with that sort of, misinformation and mistrust?
So, I have to be very candid with you. I have really mixed feelings about this, and I'll tell you why. I remember being a young lad. I was actually working as an orderly in college. Literally, I was like, pushing people around in a wheelchair and gurney and I just watched this 60-minute piece on Layer Trail, right? And Layer Trail was this thing that came from apricot seeds, and it could cure cancer. And but the big bad old AMA didn't want the word to get out
Mhm.
because no, it was generic, it was cheap, pharmaceutical industry had a hold on it, so they couldn't make money on it, so they were trying to squash it, and you'd have to drive down to Mexico to get it,
Yeah.
and all these people were dying of cancer that this Laetrile could cure. And so I'd seen it the night before, and the next day I happened to be on the oncology suite, and I ran into an oncologist.
Mhm.
He struck up a conversation with me, and in my ignorance, I just said to him, I saw this thing online. What's the story with doctors holding back on Laetrile because they can't make money on it? Of course, can you imagine like
Yeah.
an idiot youngster saying that to, right?
I'm sure there was an eye roll involved.
And he just looked at me and goes, "Listen, do you think I'm an idiot? You think I'm rounding on 20 cancer patients today? You think if there was something in my back pocket that could save their lives, I wouldn't give it to them?"
Right.
And of course, that shut me up. And of course, later on we found out there was nothing to Laetrile, and many people died just going there and not getting chemotherapy. But
Yeah.
but that's a juxtaposition to the other extreme, which is, back in the 60s, a couple of doctors, hey, started thinking, hey, this concept of ulcers, people always thought from stress or a lot of acid, were actually a bacteria. And they kind of put this out there, and they were ridiculed, just almost like some of the
Mhm.
people with COVID were ridiculed, like, and censored and knocked off and blah, blah, blah. And so one of them finally had to drink the bacteria
Yeah.
himself and, show that it created ulcers. And 15 years later, they won the Nobel Prize in medicine for it. So, when you kind of hear those two stories,
Mhm.
so I think the answer is kind of for first, I don't actually believe in censorship. Let people say whatever they want. I don't think but the flip side of it is I don't think we should buy into that because obviously that could hurt a lot of people.
Mhm.
We should just say, fine, that's a great idea. Instead of censoring them, let's that's exactly what happened to disprove all this quack stuff for COVID-19. People went down there and did double-blinded control study. The problem is that people use anecdote studies. Like I tried this on 5 patients and it worked.
Mhm.
And I think, as I said in my opinion piece on the Hill, when something will cure itself 98% of the time, it's hard for you to prove that what you're doing is actually helping, right? If 98% of people are going to get better no matter what, I could say, putting 3
Mhm.
nickels in your pocket will help you get over COVID.
Right.
I'll be right 98% of the time. Could I say that worked? This is why you really need randomized, double-blinded control studies.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And I think I did personally hear a lot of anecdotal stuff coming out during COVID, and I heard people say, "Oh, my friend or a friend of a friend." The ultimate end all be all is going to be randomized clinical trials. And I think that as scientists and researchers, we have to bridge that gap between, I think, what people can understand and information that is factually accurate, right?
Right. And so, I said it in my article, I've said it all the time. I say it to all my medical students,
Right.
the plural of anecdotes is not data. There's no
Of
data
course.
from saying my 3 friends tried this and it worked. And so I think when you understand that everything else in medicine that you subject yourself to, that's the bar it's gone through to get to you, then why should this be different?
Right. I don't know why it was so different during COVID, except that I think people were in a really heightened state of fear because it was a pandemic. And
Yeah.
I think maybe people who would normally push for data were starting to accept anecdotes in a way that I think was kind of stressful.
Yeah. Yeah, but you wouldn't accept it from like, if you go to your doctor tomorrow and say, "Listen, your blood pressure is a little high, and normally I would give you something tried and true, but 3 of my doctor friends have had really good luck with this thing.
Right.
How would you like to get started on this for your blood pressure?" I'd be like, "What do you mean 3 of friend of your friends have had good luck with it?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?" No, no,
Right.
no, 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 no. Has the FDA studied this? Have they approved this? Have universities done studies on it? So if someone has an idea of something that they've done, anecdotal study, they should be the ones
Yeah.
running to the top of a mountain saying, "Hey, this works." I'm like, "Great, let's subject it to a randomized trial and see if it really does that."
Yeah. Get some data and then we'll see.
No, let's study it.
So I've also heard you talk about mRNA vaccines, and it really mirrored how I thought, because I think when the vaccines from, the big three vaccines came out, there were lots of people who were saying that mRNA vaccines are new, they're untested, we don't know what the effects are. And obviously that was inaccurate, number one. But number two, I'm interested to hear your opinion, because the pandemic did really push mRNA vaccines and COVID driven technology forward. And I'm interested to see where you think that technology is headed in the future, because I think it's a really promising avenue.
The thing about the mRNA, being scary, was interesting. First of all, this technology was sitting on the shelf for years and years, and there's a part of me that believes it would have never gotten off the shelf, because I think I made a case for it in a couple of my articles and some podcasts, that I think while we lost 1 million lives in the US, which is tragic, I'm hoping that the silver lining is that we save hundreds of millions of lives in, hopefully, future vaccines and anti-cancer medications that mRNA technology could potentially produce, now that it's, the genie is out of the bottle,
Yeah.
as it were. So that's my hope, that those lives meant something for future lives.
Hmm.
The concept that you could take mRNA and have your own body create the protein, which in normal vaccines, you just give them the protein. Now we're giving the genetic code, and you make the protein in your muscle in your shoulder, and then it goes.
Yeah.
The people who give blowback, there's two blowbacks that you get from, this. One, it hasn't been studied enough. We don't know the long-term effects. So I want to take those two separately. Well, first of all, now that we have given it to 150 200 million people or more now,
Yeah.
that constitutes, whether we wanted to call it that, the largest clinical trial of anything ever in the history of mankind.
Hmm.
Think of everyone who got the vaccine, both the Pfizer and Moderna, as the world's large. No drug, no vaccine has been more studied now. So today, that argument that the vaccine has not been studied,
Right.
give me another clinical trial of anything that had 200 million people enrolled in it,
Right.
right? So let's park that argument. Objection. And then the last thing, which is I find very interesting, is people say, well, I don't want to get genetic material into me. And I think what they forget
Hmm.
is, when you, and almost everybody in the country has already been infected with COVID, when you get COVID, you actually get the entire genetic material,
Yeah.
and it replicates billions of times. So this whole idea of getting the virus or getting genetic material seems less scary, because when the people who get COVID, literally the virus replicates billions of times in your body, and that's billions of copies of the genetic material.
Yeah, no, I'm very interested to hear you weigh in on this, because I think it was a topic that we stayed away from for a while, partially because of the fact that, I mean, I think it would be hard to argue that, at least in my lifetime, there was no healthcare concern that was as politicized probably as COVID. I know, there are other
Mhm.
big ones that you can think of probably in history, but this one was the most recent and sort of the biggest. So it was really interesting to see, what are some areas that you are interested in vaccine research moving forward. Is there anything that you see as promising? Is there anything that you're sort of excited about in that, like, vaccine development space?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we developed this mRNA vaccine, and got it into people's arms like within a year, really, it used to be 5, 10 years to roll out a new vaccine. So I'm excited potentially for this mRNA technology to, address, malaria, AIDS. There's a whole, and cancers.
Hmm.
So very exciting time. This is part of what we were pushing pre-pandemic since 2009. And so I'm very excited, as this whole area of adult, preventative health and vaccination moves forward.
I think one of the things that it probably did inspire, fingers crossed, is a future generation of doctors, of scientists who are really passionate about that area of exploration.
Yeah, and I'm hoping so too, and it kind of makes sense. It's sort of like when penicillin was discovered, like, okay, what else can we do?
Yeah, exactly.
What other antibiotics can we develop? So yeah, I'm hoping it's the same way.
100%. The only other question I was going to ask you or have you answer, if someone wanted to make an appointment to interact with E7 Health, where can they do that?
Yeah, so we got a couple of great places. One, obviously, you can go to e7health.com. You can go to my website, baktarimd.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find our podcast, Baktari MD, on YouTube. So all of those places, you can either reach out to me or leave comments. We're tied into all the social domains, so you can reach us all those ways.
That's perfect. And we'll include all of those links in our show notes for anyone who's looking for those. Okay. And then the last question, this is kind of a fun one. We ask all of our guests, how do you take your coffee?
Yeah, so I actually was looking forward to that question. You know why? Because I don't know if anyone else has answered this the way I'm going to. I used to just put cream, half and half or something. And then someone turned me onto that and they said, you know what's in half and half? And I said, well, I don't know. So, well, it's half cream and half milk.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I'm not looking for the milk. I just want the cream. Because, well, then you should just buy the cream and use
Yeah.
use half the amount.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I did is I got the heavy whipping cream. I use just a small amount, but
Mhm.
it gives me the same bang as when I used to use a little more half and half. So yeah, coffee with a little bit of cream.
That's great. I'm going to have to try that because I'm a half and half gal.
Right. Did anyone ever say, what's in the other half? I mean, what is half and half of
Of
what?
course. That's so
So
true.
half is like the double whipping cream, and the other half is milk, which has the sugar in it, and
Yeah.
which you don't necessarily want. So just if you just get the cream and cut it in half, you get the same thing without the milk.
Cut out the middleman.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I love
So
that.
that's that.
This has been amazing, Dr. Baktari. You've been so generous with your time, and I am, it's been an honor speaking with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions.
No, it's a pleasure. I love doing this, and thank you for being such a great hostess. I appreciate it. It was amazing conversation.
Yeah, great conversation. I look forward to speaking with you hopefully in the future. Thank you again. This was incredible.
All right, be well. That was amazing. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you have any recommendations for topics we should cover or people we should interview, reach out to us on Instagram. You can DM us, Malpractice Podcast, or you can email us, malpracticepodcast@gmail.com. Obviously, we don't listen to emails because I'm dumb, but we do read them as evidence today.
Yeah. Huge shout out to Dr. Baktari for being on the show today. We hope you guys like this episode. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe wherever you like to listen. And don't forget, malpractice makes perfect. Bye-bye.